City Council meeting is called to order. Ms. Simpson, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Studebaker.
Here.
Councilors Wendland,
Here.
Mans, Kohoff.
Here.
O'Neill,
Here.
Wynn,
Here.
and Lamont.
Here.
Okay. Before we get started on the meeting, I want to say a few words about the past week. Like you, I was horrified by the video of George Floyd's death in Minneapolis. And although it happened far from here, we're all affected by this. Sadly, it seems that we are far from the dream of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., that people be judged by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. I'm asking the people of Lake Oswego to stand with the City Council in building a community where all people belong. This is a moment for all of us to recommit to the American ideal that all people are created equal. In December of 2018, City Council adopted a resolution affirming our commitment to welcoming and including all people in our community. Our policy says the City of Lake Oswego works to welcome and include all of our community's residents at city facilities, city events, and meetings. We strive to ensure that city services are relevant and responsive to all residents, and that all people can participate in city projects and decisions. Lake Oswego's economic, cultural, and political environment are made better when all people have access to city programs and services. Last year, the city appointed a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to help us ensure that diverse voices are included in city decisions and that our city staff reflects the diversity of this community. Additionally, the city co-hosted a multi-city equity summit last fall. We collaborate with community organizations such as Respond to Racism, LO for Love, and Bridges to Understanding in our communities. We provided training to our staff and have committed to council training on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We are particularly proud that our police department's leadership has been on the forefront of this work. We know about the history of racism in police departments, and our department is tackling it head on. We have more to do to make sure everyone in Lake Oswego feels safe and has a sense of belonging. We are confident, though, that we are working towards a stronger community where every person has access to the benefits of this community. We appreciate the help of our residents very much. Thank you very much. And I think probably as well that we have a moment of silence. On a different note, I want to tell you that the mayors had a meeting, the Clackamas County mayors had a meeting last week obviously by Zoom. And we all agreed that the worst thing that could happen would be to have another surge and have to close things up again. To avoid that, we're asking that everybody be responsible, wear masks, keep your distance. And that way we can get out of this thing slowly, but get out of it and don't have to turn back to where we were before. So we're asking you and the citizens to abide by these rules to avoid that. Okay, Ms. Simpson, did you have any requests for comment on public comment?
No, Mayor, no one has requested to provide citizen comment this evening.
Okay. Then the next thing on our agenda is public hearings, the first of which is on some changes to the building code, planning code. Ms. Davis, you're going to help us out on that. Is that correct?
Well, I will. Thank you, Mayor. This is the time set
Your
for
name is Davis?
Pardon? Yes.
I'm just kidding you, David.
I thought you said David. Pardon me. I will begin.
David, why don't you begin with
I will begin. I apologize. Yes, with the announcement that must be made, and then Ms. Davis will take over from there. Pardon.
Thank you.
This is the time set for a public hearing on Ordinance 2840, an ordinance of the City of Lake Oswego amending the Community Development Code to replace two graphics in the R6 zone regulations, an LOC 5006.001.3 and an LOC 5006.001.4, and adopting findings. It's case number LU 19-0038. This is a legislative decision, which is generally a policy decision within the discretion of the City Council. And although it may be discretionary, it must also comply with any applicable state law, as well as any applicable statewide planning goal or administrative rule adopted pursuant to ORS Chapter 197. And a legislative amendment to the zoning code, development code, or development standards must also comply with any applicable provision of the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan. The hearing process will begin with a presentation by staff. Any testimony will then be received from the public. Individuals allowed up to 5 minutes to recognize neighborhood associations, homeowners associations, government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Time limits will not include time taken up by questions from the council or responses to such questions, and any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. As this is a legislative proceeding, I will not be asking about ex parte contacts or bias, but I will ask if any city council member wishes to make any declaration with relation to conflicts of interest. And hearing no declarations, we'd be ready for the staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Okay, Ellen. You're muted. You better unmute.
Oh,
There you go. Can I suggest, Ellen, what works on, go down to the sound thing down at the bottom right, click on that and then move the thing just a little bit, then maybe you might be able to be heard. Huh.
Any luck?
Yes,
Still not?
nope, that's working.
Okay.
Ellen, you're ready to go.
Great. So, okay,
yes.
I'm Ellen Davis, associate planner for the city. And we have before us a code amendment, no text amendment, entirely within first edition neighborhood. That staff has identified along with the first edition neighborhood association that we wanted to update. There were some inaccuracies and some issues that we wanted to bring forward into a modern era. So the first item is a roof form graphic. So this only applies to the R6 zone, which has a minimum roof pitch requirement that all primary roof forms be a 612 pitch or steeper. The current code graphic isn't particularly clear about what is a primary roof form versus secondary roof forms when reading the text of the code. And the text of the code specifies that the primary roof pitch or the primary roof forms would be for all single family dwellings, and that secondary roof forms would not need to meet the minimum roof pitch requirements. And those secondary roof forms are listed as sunrooms, balconies, dormers, porticos, or bays. And this graphic doesn't really reflect that. It's a bit confusing. It shows a couple of different secondary roof forms that don't match what the text says. And this house also doesn't look like a typical house in the first edition neighborhood because the rectangular, narrow lot shape in this neighborhood wouldn't really allow a wide shape like that. So we wanted to update it with a new graphic that better reflects the pattern of the neighborhood, having a narrower house form that would better fit on a rectangular lot in this neighborhood. And then we also wanted to make it clear that the primary roof forms are all of the roof forms over the habitable space, and that the secondary roof forms are just those listed in the code, the dormers, porches, those smaller roof forms. And we've also made sure that this graphic is exactly a 612 pitch. And so this is going to help to clarify what is expected of applicants in this neighborhood, what we want those houses to look like in order to meet the code. So we're not changing the text, we're not changing the requirements, we're just trying to make it clearer what the text already says. And the same thing goes for the current code graphic for garages. We also have some very specific garage location requirements in the R6 zone. And the current code graphic actually has a couple of inaccuracies. So a porch is not allowed on a primary front porch is required to be on the narrow frontage of a house. So we actually wouldn't allow a new house to have a porch on the side. We would require it on the narrow street frontage. The garage, if it is facing the avenue side or a lettered avenue side, would need to be set back 2 feet, not from a porch, but from a house, even if a porch were allowed. There are a number of inaccuracies here. We also have an unimproved alley that we give a lot of text space to currently. There aren't very many unimproved alleys left in first edition, so we kind of wanted to take that out of there. The text will stay. So if there are any unimproved alley lots that do need to use that code section, the text remains. There are only 2 houses that we could identify that would absolutely have no access to an alley. So we did leave that. But also these lots are very wide. They don't really look like the typical lot that you would see walking around first edition neighborhood. So we propose.
We lost you, Ellen.
Ms. Davis, your audio is cut out again. Would you mind going back and moving your audio slider bar so we can maybe reconnect to your audio?
We do have a porch shown only on the street side as permitted. And then our garages, we are showing 2 feet back from the side of the house, which is the requirement in the text. We've got everything measured out and scaled exactly to meet all of the text requirements in this zone. We're also trying to reflect patterns of garages that are more likely to exist. Double garage, showing an access from the avenue, showing alley access. We're trying to just hit any possibility in this zone and just update the graphic, make it look more clear. So that is pretty much it for this zone. For these graphic amendments, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Ms. Davis, can I ask that you cut your camera? It seems to be impeding your audio. So Ellen, if you would just click off your video, and that way I think your audio will come through a little more clearly.
Ms. Davis, just to be clear, Zone 6 or the R6 is first edition.
Okay, great.
Mayor Studebaker,
yes, that is correct. It is only in the first edition neighborhood.
All right, thank you. Questions, anybody?
I'll make a motion.
Wait a minute, we have more testimony.
Oh, more testimony.
Yeah. All right, no questions? So is there public testimony, Ms. Simpson?
Yes, Carol Okert has joined the meeting, and we did not clarify prior to the meeting. Ms. Okert, will you be speaking as a representative of the neighborhood or as just a private party?
As a representative of the neighborhood.
Okay, so you'll have 10 minutes, and I'll let you know when your time is up, okay? You may start.
Welcome, Carol.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. This is a steep learning curve, but I appreciate the Zoom with the patience and support. In fact, just a comment that as we are increasing our Zoom capabilities, we actually have a Zoom notification on our neighborhood signs that we pound into the ground so that the public can participate in our board meetings. So we're all learning as we go. So thank you for including me. I wanted to let you know that Planner Davis did an excellent job working through this project. She came and met with our board. She engaged in a great discussion. We really, as a group, went through a lot of the details. She followed up and refined. She also organized a meeting with one of the prominent designers of the homes in R6 that we were able to actually talk with someone who is using this code, and he was very satisfied with it. We're confident that these graphics do a really good job of showing how to apply our R6 code. I think it's going to make it easier for staff, for people who want to develop, and for the neighborhood folks. So again, thanks to Ellen for working so well on this project. We appreciate it. That's it.
Questions of Ms. Ogert? Yes, Councilor Mans?
Ms. Hokart, hello.
Hi.
I wanted to thank you for acknowledging Miss Davis. That was very kind. I appreciate that. I think probably speaking for all of us, it was a nice touch. Thank you.
She did a great job. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Is there anybody who wants anybody more that wants to testify on this matter?
No, Mayor.
Not for or against?
Correct.
Okay, then this public hearing is closed. Now, Councilor Lamont.
Okay, I'll make a motion to tentatively approve ordinance 2840 and direct staff to return on June 16th, 2020 with a final version of the ordinance, including findings and conclusions for LU 190098.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All right, Ms. Simpson, will you call the roll?
Mayor Studebaker,
Yes?
Councilor Wendland,
Yes.
Mans, Kohoff,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
and Lamont.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, the next item of business is annexation, and I think, Mr. Powell, do you have to recite again?
Yes, I would have some preliminary things to say
Okay,
when
go
we're
for it.
ready. All right, thank you, Mayor. This is the time set for a public hearing as well on ordinance 2846, an ordinance annexing to the city of Lake Oswego, one parcel consisting of 3.62 acres and the public right-of-way at 900 Atwater Road, declaring City of Lake Oswego Resource Protection Overlay, Habitat Benefit Area, and zoning pursuant to LOC 5001-004.5A to C, and removing the territory from certain districts, file number AN 20-0003. This land use request involves the application of the criteria and standards listed in the staff report, which is available from staff or on the tape, or has been available from staff. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable criteria as listed in the staff report, or such other criteria contained in the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan of Land Use Regulations, which you believe apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the City Council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. And the failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damage in circuit court. Public hearing begins with a presentation by staff. One adjustment to what's in the agenda is I believe the applicant's present may or may not want to testify, but if the applicant does testify, since it's a quasi-judicial hearing, they would have up to 20 minutes. Testimony by others, individuals be allowed up to 5 minutes. Groups, neighborhood associations allowed up to 10 minutes. Then a rebuttal by the applicant if anyone else testifies. And those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the City Council. And again, any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case will anyone's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. I must say that prior to closing the public hearing, a party who testifies before the council may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. And if they so request, either the public hearing will be continued to a date certain not less than 7 days after this date, or the record will remain open for at least 7 days after this hearing to enable the parties to submit additional written evidence. Now, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so at this point, I would ask if any member of the City Council wishes to make any declarations relating to ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. And hearing none, if there's anyone who's ready to testify, if there are any challenges to a City Council member's right to consider the application. I think one person's waiting, but apparently there are no challenges. And with that, we'd be ready for the staff report.
Mr. Espy.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Mayor Studebaker, members of the council, this annexation is being reviewed as a public hearing since we're annexing a portion of the right-of-way that's not along the property frontage. I've provided a few maps that include zoning, sensitive lands, and the present location of the sanitary sewer facilities. And Before I get started, staff received a letter from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon yesterday. And similar to the letters that we have received in the past, it states that the findings do not adequately address Goal 10 housing, and they are requesting more detail on housing type, affordability, et cetera. The letter's fairly, it's about 2 pages, but I won't burden you with that now. They also provided a model set of findings that are used by the city of Beaverton for us to use if we needed. Staff, in response to that, staff has provided the appropriate level of detail in the findings that is similar to the example from Beaverton provided by the Fair Housing Council. So, and the city's approach is quite similar to the non-discretionary path or option 1 in the example provided by the Fair Housing Council. Under their model, the proposed rezoning is non-discretionary because the zoning is prescribed by the comprehensive plan and the zoning conversion table in the city county UGMA, similar to ours. So zones that are applied consistent with or matching land use designations in the city's Goal 10 Metro Housing Rule compliant comp plan, which it is, the city of Beaverton and other jurisdictions have more options to consider when they're annexing lots and designating zones. For example, a comprehensive plan designation of low density might be implemented in any particular low density area with R7.5, R10, or R15 zones. The city provides specific zoning designations on the comp plan map, and unless the city proposes to amend the comp plan to change those designations, we don't feel that we need to evaluate the proposed zones against the housing needs analysis. We merely apply the comp plan. Nevertheless, staff can recommend a tentative approval this evening and provide the additional details they are requesting. We're pretty close to what we have already in the Housing Council's letter. And even though it's essentially the same approach as the example found in under option 1, we could have a tentative approval this evening and come back with revised findings that contain those elements that they're requesting. And then earlier this week, Councillor Koloff aptly expressed concern about the validity of the information found in the comprehensive plan housing needs analysis since it's over 7 years old. And in response to that, the city expects to update the housing needs analysis by 2023. In our the HNE and our comp plan remains valid for purposes of comprehensive planning and zoning. And of course, housing developers will use more current information, to do market studies for the sale of properties and that sort of thing. Staff acknowledges that it will be helpful to have more recent data, and the 2020 census will likely show demographic shifts that make it timely to update the city's housing needs analysis. And we anticipate applying for a grant and beginning the work on the next HNA update in 2022. Of course, if we begin too soon before the regional allocations are made, we may end up having to redo the work. So I think we're going to wait just a little bit and then get started at that time. Let me go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint here. I think this is it. This is it. I don't see it on my, oh shoot, okay.
Mr. SB, I might have quick access to a copy. Would you like me to pull it up?
Yeah, that would be good. I don't seem to see it on my pull-up screen here, and I have it on my desktop, but it doesn't seem to want to show.
Between the two of us, I think we'll get it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Let's see, so
Reminds me of that song, Just the Two of Us.
yes.
Paul, you might need to stop sharing your screen so I can.
All right.
All right, let's see here. This is very well rehearsed.
It was.
Here we go.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I appreciate it.
Yay.
Okay, so you're going to be able to, you're going to need to control it, I think, because I don't know if I can. Okay.
This is your first slide, true?
Yes. So this property is located at 900 Atwater Road, and it's approximately 6.62 acres, and will be zoned R15 with an RP and an HBA overlay. So a resource protection and hazard habitat benefit area overlay.
Mr. Espy,
Yes.
can you talk straight into the computer screen? Because when you turn your head like that, it gets difficult to hear sometimes.
Oh, I apologize. I certainly will try to do that.
Thank you.
So the RP area, and I can have the next screen, is designated in blue at the south end of the parcel, and the HBA is designated in green. The Habitat Benefit Code section provides incentives for property owners to use habitat-friendly development practices, and its purpose is to allow and encourage habitat-friendly development where site design and development protects and enhances or restores significant riparian upland wildlife habitat. It also allows lot density and floor area transfer based on minimum lot area of the underlying zone from an HBA protection area to a non-source area of the property, or to an adjacent property under a common ownership. And then I can take the next screen when you get a chance, Anne Marie. Sanitary sewer service is available from a Lake Oswego collection line approximately 100 feet east of the site. And partition, subdivision, or any other kind of development would need to connect to that sewer. Water is available from an 8-inch Lake Oswego water main and Atwater Road along the site frontage, and the nearest existing fire hydrant is located about 110 feet west along the north side of Atwater Road. And then the final slide, if I could. Staff finds that this property is within the urban services boundary and that the annexation is timely with regards to the public facilities and recommends approval. That concludes my presentation. I'm open for any questions you might have.
Questions, anything? Councilor Lamont?
Yes, Mr. Espy, the first question is, we worked hard and we worked closely with Forest Highlands to downzone and adjust all their zoning and upzone along Country Club. That was done recently, so this is following that. By us bringing it in the city, we're following the zoning that we work with closely with the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The second question is, we're wrapping around one lot, and it's an isolated lot. That's still going to be county. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The next question is, in your report, when you're talking about county road coming to the city, and I look at it and I see red and yellow where the city owns, but the white to the west that is unincorporated, that's still going to be county. Is that correct?
That will be county, yes.
So if we're plowing that street, we have to pick up the plow where it's county and put it down where it's city. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure if we have an IGA
agreement,
with the
right.
county to continue plowing the road up there or not, but
And then when the police are patrolling,
yeah.
I think he's teasing you.
yeah, when the police are patrolling, then they don't look at this side of the street when they go by the county road. Is that right?
We've given them explicit instructions not to do that.
That's
That's correct. No, I'm
And then
kidding.
the next
I'm
question
kidding.
is, there was something in here about the Lake Grove Park District. I thought the city of Lake Oswego had a Parks Department. What is the Lake Grove Parks District?
That's a fairly broad swath of area that covers most of the city that has the Parks District identified on that map. And I think it's basically there for any kind of additional tax assessment or, taxing district for assessment for parks. And David has his hand
Yeah,
up, so
go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and let him answer that.
What that is actually the Lake Grove Swim Park. The Lake Grove Park District is the same as the Lake Oswego School District. So it's only, and the properties that are within that district are the properties that were within the old Lake Grove School District before it merged with the Lake Oswego School District. They still have rights to use that park. So
Right.
it's a park district in name, but it is the school district that
It's
administers.
coterminous with the school district boundaries, is that correct? No.
Well, it'd be
just for
the
Lake Grove.
coterminous with the old Lake Grove School District boundaries, which are a portion of the current Lake Oswego 7J boundaries. So it was the Lake Corporation gave rights to that district back when there were two school districts in town.
Okay.
So it's still it's interesting combination of rights there.
And the last question is then, when we show the fiscal impact with the tax, we're showing what's there today, that it's an undeveloped lot or an underdeveloped lot, it's the low tax. If it gets developed with 4 or more lots and we get new homes on there, there will be a significant change in the tax revenue. Do we ever project those out on these annexations? Paul?
I don't believe that we do.
There's really no way to do it because you don't know what the value of the property would be, and that you don't know what the change property ratio that would be applied to the development. You don't know when it would happen. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's not really an artful way for staff to do that.
And the last thing is just when you look at the map and you see the size of the parcels to the west and even to the south, has there been any discussion with all the owners to get together to try and put a plan to do this all together? That's the last question.
Well, in the past, we've had pre-ops where 1 or 2 people would come in and try to combine efforts for, larger subdivisions when it was zoned R7.5 up there. But we haven't had them lately, and it's been difficult because of the resource designations and sewer availability and other kinds of things, outside the question that you're asking that have caused those coalitions to kind of fall apart.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Mans, I think you had a question.
I withdraw my question. I think Councilor O'Neill has his hand.
Councilor O'Neill.
Look to me that has a brand new home on it, a multi-million-dollar brand new home. So I don't think there's any redevelopment. It's really essentially just coming into Lake Oswego and not being in the county. Because that home was only built 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think they want to enhance the rear yard and put in a pool and maybe another outbuilding or something like that. But nothing, I don't think we're proposing additional.
Any other questions? Councilor, Mr. Powell.
I just had a comment in Paul's opening comments. I don't know that he's suggesting necessarily the findings would be altered to mimic Beaverton's at all. A few things might be added, but the reason for coming back with additional findings is to at least address the fact that a objection was raised by the housing land advocates and to see how the city respond to that. But basically, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the city's findings as they are very much like Beaverton option 1, only customized for the way that the city is doing things, which is we already have a comprehensive plan which was approved and acknowledged under Goal 10. And rather than amending our comprehensive plan now, we have an automatic application of the zone designation as applied. Beaverton had a little bit different. They have a list that they had with the corresponding county and city goals. So in any event, we think it's good to have an opportunity to address those concerns and to say why we think those findings are adequate. And Paul, I might have spoken out of turn, but at least that's how I see it, if that's correct.
No, that's helpful. That helps clarify it a little bit because I thought the findings were correct as well, but that definitely clarifies the reason we might want to come back.
Any other questions of Mr. Espy? Okay, is there anybody, this is a land use hearing, correct, Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Is there anybody that wants to testify in favor of this annexation?
We're actually, Mr. Kaming has joined the meeting and he has the opportunity to use 20 minutes if he so wishes. Mr. Kaming, would you like to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, and you do have 20 minutes. I'll have a timer going and I'll let you know if you exceed 20 minutes. You can go ahead.
Oh, great. My only question was some of the things that Paul was bringing up were, some of it kind of goes over my head as to, that Beaverton issue, so someone sent in a letter, as I understand you mentioned, and I would imagine that this meeting would have an outcome of yes or no, but did I misunderstand, and you were suggesting that we would get a conditional approval to supply more information to somebody for that, or did I just completely misunderstand that?
Mr. Powell?
Well, I can answer. No, there are what they're called findings, if you look in the packet, which say how this would comply with various legal provisions, including statewide planning goals. The housing land advocates would like to see more detailed findings explaining how this meets the city's housing goals than are in the draft findings for the council to adopt. So what the staff suggestion is that we then amend those findings to at least address that objection and explain why these findings are adequate. So it's kind of a technical legal thing. It isn't, I can't speak for the Housing Land Advocates and Fair Housing Council. I don't think they oppose annexing your property. They simply want the city to address goal 10, which is the housing goal, in more detail, as they're advocates for making sure that cities are meeting their housing targets when they make any changes to their plans. Did that make sense? Or I'm glad to follow up.
I think so. Well, so I guess back to the black and white issue is when we convene from this meeting, will we have a definitive yes or no, or is there? When I started to talk earlier, I was Paul S. actually was talking about getting that letter just yesterday, and so I didn't know if is that the same topic?
Yes, it's the same as testimony. You could submit written or oral testimony. And what the recommendation of the council is that they tentatively approve, meaning that they intend to approve the annexation, but they have to have written findings to do so. So they would tentatively approve it, and then if they choose to do so, and then would ask staff to bring back those amended findings in the ordinance on June 16th for final adoption.
Councilor Wendland?
So can we move to enact the ordinance and then skip all the extra findings because we think that we're right?
Well, no, you could, but I think that were there to be an appeal, I'm not expecting it, but were there to be an appeal, one thing that needs to happen is your findings need to address any objections brought up in testimony. So that's why I was saying in the explanation supplemental to what Paul said, the amended findings may not do much more than to mention there was a subjection and to state why the council would conclude the findings are adequate. But I really would recommend that we at least address the fact there was an objection in those findings so that we follow those rules.
And we're not going to have a motion until we see if there's other testimony.
Pardon me?
Correct.
Yes,
I'm just
yes.
asking the procedure if we can just get this
Okay.
done tonight. But you're saying basically we need to tentatively approve it, subject to the findings, and finally approve it on the 16th.
Correct. Your motion would be very similar to what you just did on the R6 zone, except changing the number of the ordinance. So
Still, we have to ask if there's other testimony.
yes, well, I don't know if the applicant's through with his testimony or not. He had asked a question, so we might want to see if he wishes to continue.
Do you have anything further to say, sir?
Nope. Well, as far as like accepting any additional testimony, that's what this review period was for, right? Up to June 2nd. Nobody can add more questions after this. So once you've given them essentially, which I wouldn't consider that an objection, they're just asking for more information. I guess I'm still not sure exactly why we couldn't approve, because we're the ones that are wanting it to happen now, and then just supplying that with the, because I don't think that they're not going to object. I mean, and even if they could, well, I get they can't, right? I mean, they can't object. Sorry.
Mr. Brandt, we're having the hearing right now. You have the opportunity to testify, which you've done.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see if anybody else wants to testify.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
My understanding is no one else does. So then we'll go to a motion on the annexation.
Great. Okay. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Lamont.
Yeah, I just, Councilor Powell, Attorney Powell, we already did this in a previous annexation where we just sent a letter back to them stating that we're covering everything with our plans and our policies, including the recent changes. So it's really pro forma, so the applicant knows it's a straightforward letter response. Is that correct?
Well, what it is amending the findings to say that they've made this objection. We did that once before, and we amended the findings somewhat. Now they sent another letter saying, well, we'd like to see even more in your findings, and we will respond. We might add a couple of things. Staff will be talking about it, but we'll basically be explaining why this still complies and that the objections in their second letter are not well taken.
And the reason to do it, to be clear, is that spending a little more work in a couple of weeks now to make sure our legal findings are good and accurate will reduce the chances that an outside party might appeal this decision. And that would take a lot longer than 2 weeks and cost a lot more money than the 2-week delay. So that's the reason to do it, is to make sure we have a really solid decision that the applicant can rely on to move ahead with their projects.
All right, is there,
Can I make a motion?
wait a minute, let me ask if there's anybody else who wants to testify. And then we will.
Mayor, there's no one else that's requested an
Go ahead,
opportunity to
Councilor Windland.
testify.
I'd like
Councilor
to
Windland, go
move,
ahead.
I would like to move to tentatively approve ordinance 2846 and direct staff to return on June 16th, 2020 with a final version of the ordinance, including findings and conclusions for LU 19-0038.
Second.
Okay,
And if
motion
I may,
made.
this, instead of the LU number, this would be AN 20-0003.
I knew that. I kind of forgot the number.
Making sure he was.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Would you call a roll, please, Ms. Simpson?
Mayor Studebaker,
Yes.
Councilor Wendland,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Kohoff,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes.
and Lamont.
Yes, welcome to Lake Oswego.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a review of council business. Ms. Bennett?
So there's not a whole lot to report that you didn't hear about last week, except for just a couple of pieces of information about being 12 days into phase 1 in Clackamas County. This morning, the report from the county suggested that we are not meeting the health criteria. Well, I shouldn't say that. We are meeting 3 of the 6 health criteria in Clackamas County to move into phase 2, and we are not meeting currently after 12 days. A different 3. I have a feeling, although no one said this, that the real reason is because of the outbreak that the Oregonian reported at Bob's Red Mill. But we'll try to get more information from you. And before I turn it over to Director Kelly, I also want to just remind everybody that the farmers market does open this weekend. And I also just got an email that Hood strawberries are available. So get down there early to get your berries. All right. With that, I thought you might want to hear from our library director, Melissa Kelly, about how curbside pickup's going and what the plans are for the next phase of restoration of library services. So thanks for being here tonight, Melissa. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me all okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, and thank you for your leadership and support during this time. And I appreciate coming before you today to give you an update on library services. Library staff continue to support the needs of the community with expanded digital resources, virtual programs, and staff available by phone and email. And most recently, we are now offering curbside pickup of reserved library materials. We're offering appointments for curbside pickup 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it's been very popular, and at least the next 3 days are completely packed with appointments, which we love to see. We've distributed the majority of holds that were awaiting pickup at the time of our closure and are now processing the holds that were placed after our closure. And you will love this number. The total number of holds to be processed for pickup at Lake Oswego Library total over 11,000. So we've got a lot of holds that need to be filled, and over 3,000 are on our shelves. So we're currently processing these, and I anticipate that by this time next week, we will be caught up on the backlog and able to process holds as they are placed. As we process them, library members are receiving notifications that their holds are available with directions to call the library to make an appointment. So we're making a lot of people happy as they get those notices. As restrictions continue to be lifted, library staff are working to expand curbside service. We expect there will be a demand for this for many months, if not years. We're working to get laptops into circulation. They've now been ordered. We're finalizing a protocol for wireless printing. Residents will be able to send a print job from the parking lot via our wireless network, and staff can deliver it via curbside pickup or a similar method. We're working on a librarian is in booth, starting outdoors and eventually moving indoors, where we can register new cards, provide in-person research and information services, readers advisory, and tech support, and where folks can claim their free books for summer reading. And we're also working to offer opportunities for browsing, starting with outdoor pop-up displays and eventually moving indoors. We're designing a one-way route experience where community members can kind of meander through some face-out displays, and also outdoor family events with limited numbers of participants. We expect that access to the building will likely start by appointment only and then move to metered access to maintain occupancy limits. And in order to restore access to the facility, we're working within the guidelines of the state, county, and city, and in cooperation with our county library partners, and taking a measured approach to provide adequate time to implement and evaluate the protective strategies that we are working toward. And we think a controlled reopening strategy will allow us to manage the return to full operations while ensuring the safety of employees and the public. Some of the strategies for the library include providing hand sanitizer, requiring shared spaces and equipment to be cleaned after each use, setting public capacity limits, installing floor decals and signage to denote where to stand for service, installing shields and or stanchions, removing or limiting seating and computer stations, and creating an area where the public can opt in to provide contact information for the purpose of contact tracing. We also understand that some members will want to continue to utilize the curbside pickup and digital options, and will continue to offer and expand on those valuable services. Library staff have renewed the due dates of all physical library materials to June 30th, and we are still asking the community to keep those items at home until our full county library system has regained the ability to move materials between libraries. But we are getting very close to that point. I expect that our system will be able to handle those returns mid to late June. So that is the quick update from the library. Thank you again for your leadership and support, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Melissa, thank you to you and your staff for a great job.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Councilor Wendland?
I would like to suggest that Lake Oswego makes our library staff available to the unemployment division down in Salem to process all the unemployment claims, because they're darn efficient. And congratulations, Melissa, you're doing a fabulous job. They need your help. Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to my staff. They'll get a good chuckle out of that.
That was a good one.
Councilor Mans?
Yes, I just want to echo what Councilor Wendland said. The learning curve was steep, but you flattened that curve at the library, boom. And so impressed with the work that you do there. Please let staff know.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Again, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
So I don't have anything more on COVID this week unless y'all have questions. You do know the ball field, the field part of the ball fields are open. Yes, okay. Unfortunately, playgrounds, no word yet on playgrounds.
Anything further? Okay, next item on our agenda is a consent agenda for the backyard habitat certification, a resolution extending the additional extension of the state of emergency, and then approving the minutes for April 21st and May 12th.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll second it. Any discussion? Okay, would you call the roll, please, Ms. Simpson?
Mayor Studebaker,
Yes.
Councilors Wendland,
Yes.
Mans,
Yes.
Kohlhoff,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes.
Nguyen,
Yes.
and Lamont.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Is there any information from council to tell the rest of us? Okay. Reports of officers, Manager Bennett?
There's one thing I should have said. I think on your last virtual meeting, I mentioned that we were going to try to return to an in-person setting by June 16th, and we've concluded that with occupancy limits and a couple of other sort of technical glitches, we probably can't pull that off. So we're now going to stay virtual on your June 16th work session, study session, with a hopefully we'll have it sorted out by July 7th to go to an in-person setting.
Okay,
So just so I said this on the camera where the folks who are watching at home can hear it.
all right, thank you. Anything further? All right, thank you, everybody. The meeting is adjourned.